Can I get a show of hands of who here has heard about the S&P 500 before? Well, a great number. So for those of you who don't know, it's a stock market index that contains the 500 largest companies in the U.S. Here are the citing for the term AI in their financial report for the past 10 years. And that number has reached 199 for the first quarter of the year 2024. Compare that to what it was 10 years ago. I think there's no doubt in what the world is trending towards today, and that is artificial intelligence. When we talk about AI, it's easy to get into the hype with, oh, it's going to be the self-driving vehicles on our roads. It's going to be machines that's beating chess grandmasters on the world stage. And it makes us think that AI is some type of magical force that's capable of everything, like Jarvis in Iron Man, if we have any Marvel fans here. So I want to ask this question, though. How do we really understand artificial intelligence? To me, it is not only about algorithms and the programming, although they're very important, but it's about the hardware that drives it all. Without the hardware, these programs are just very fancy screensavers just sitting there doing nothing. And this is what I want to explore today. I want to take everybody on a journey of exploring, of understanding AI from the hardware aspects of things. And I'm going to compare the computer, which is the power unit of AI, to something that every single person here has, your human brain. And during this exploration, I want to pose one question. Can computer ultimately replace us? If so, how far off is that future? To make things a little easier, I'm going to use an analogy. Imagine a computer is a bustling port. You have warehouses, docks, a control tower, cranes, and more. And this is exactly like what a computer does, right? Each component serves its own role. So this will make things a little easier, and we're going to go from there. So first off, you have your CPU. It is also called your central processing unit. I would like you to compare it to the port control tower. It is there to oversee all the actions happening in the port, and it makes sure that everything's run smoothly, coordinating all the different tasks happening simultaneously. And this is exactly what the CPU does. It controls all the components of the computer, and it's the brain of the computer, basically. But just like the port control tower, where there's just so many operators in there, the CPU can only handle one task at a time. But this is incredibly fast, around 3 billion cycles per second. So they act like single-threaded thinkers. And this is exactly why companies like Intel and AMD, I'm sure you guys have heard of those names before, are trying to put more thread into a CPU because they want to have more single-threaded thinkers think at the same time. This is also known as the von Neumann bottleneck, where there is delays for the CPU when they're trying to process information or access memory. However, as the CPUs are getting smaller and smaller, currently going to 4 nanometers in size, which is about the size of 4 glucose molecules for any bio students out there. There is a physical limit of how small transistor size can get at the atomic level. And this is why the Moore's law, which is basically explaining why computing power doubles every 2 years, is being challenged at this moment. And I think in the upcoming future, it will no longer be true. Then you have the GPU, the graphics processing unit. And I like to compare it with the cranes. So at a port, the cranes, they're designed to move cargoes from the ship and into the docking area. They're designed to do this very precise, very fast, and there's countless of them handling multiple tasks all at once. And this is exactly the case with the GPU. They are specialized in parallel processing, which makes them great for machine learning, for artificial intelligence, compared to CPU, which is more generic in uses. And This also relates to how our brain functions, where we have neurons. So these are cells in our brain that helps us process information. There's around 100 billion of these in our brain, and unlike the CPU, which can only do one task at a time, they backfire simultaneously all at once. So you can be walking down the street, listening to Bruno Mars, while preparing for a math test that's going to happen in 20 minutes. So this is the power of the brain. They're not single-threaded thinkers. They think all at once. Then we can move on to the motherboard. The motherboard is somewhat like the port's infrastructures. So you have roads and an infrastructure at a dock, right? You have to connect everything together, the components. You have to have the cargo shipped to the warehouses, and you have to have the docking area connected to the control tower. This is the same with the motherboard. The data has to run through the whole computer system so that they can reach different components. And imagine a port without roads, and the trucks and vehicles cannot transport any goods to one place or to another. Total chaos. However, the motherboard, unlike like the dock, is very fixed and static. You can only renew your rows after a couple of years, and there's nothing that keeps on evolving about these infrastructure. But this is not the case for synapses in our brain. So synapses are actually tiny connections that allow your brains to communicate with each other through transferring signals. And these allow humans to adapt, learn, and recover after processing. It's like your muscles. So when you go out and work out, you break your muscles, they build up again, but stronger. And this is done through the process of neuroplasticity. And this is what makes us able to learn a new language after countless setbacks. It's how we get to know about a new sport or learn a new fact from trivia quiz in TOK. So with neuroplasticity, we are able to create new bonds while strengthening our old ones. And this is what makes our brain much more dynamic compared to the motherboard. And here's a number that's hard to wrap your mind around. So there's around 100 trillion synapses in your brain. So that's around 100 times the total amount of planets in the Milky Way. Planets, not stars. And with so much potential in your brain, the motherboard just can't compare, because these allow human intelligence to create, to learn, to adapt, and most importantly, it allows us to recover from any sort of setbacks. And of course, we have our memory system in the port or in the computer. So this is the RAM. It's called the random access memory. So when ships carry cargo as data, they need somewhere to store that temporarily for quick turnarounds, and they can access it very immediately. And this is what the RAM is for. It's like a temporary docking area next to the ship where they can unload all of their cargo, but at the same time, there is a limited space. So if you have all 10 ships coming at once, it's going to become congested and overwhelmed, which causes delays and ultimately leading to slower speed. And that's exactly how the RAM works, because there's a very limited amount of storage space, but at the same time, they can be accessed immediately and fast. So what about the other cargo and data? They're stored in the warehouses, right? So this is the hard disk drive and solid state drive, HDD and SSD. This is like the long-term warehouses where all the data can be stored and retrieved after some time of going through the shelves. So the HDD is like a more old version of warehouses created in the 1900s, where you have to go through all the labels, which are handwritten, whereas the SSD is much more modern, and you have a tablet and you know exactly where to find your cargo. So, of course, the new SSD is going to be much more expensive, but at the same time, they're much more fast and sleek as a warehouse compared to the old HDD versions. Our brain actually functions in a very similar way. So we have long-term and short-term memories. So for short-term memories, it is our ability to memorize a phone number just long enough to dial it. But if this number goes on too long, with the precision it requires, there we just come to a mental bottleneck. And that's where the long-term memory comes in. So the long-term memory is how humans memorize facts, learn from experiences, and gain skills over time. So it is how you can swim after 20 years without touching water. It is your cycling ability after not touching the bike after childhood. And it is your ability to play an instrument for your whole lifetime. These are long-term memories that you remember for your life. And what makes it different to the memories in a computer, our human memory is much more complex and integrated. It's like interdependent warehouses that are connected to each other. So the cargo are sorted in much more complex systems and are stored in different categories and different places all at the same time. This makes it a much more developed and fluid system compared to what we have right now in the drives. So after talking so much about the components of computers and our human brain, what does all this mean for AI and the future of human intelligence? So there's no doubt of how powerful the computer can be with the CPU, GPU processing information just a split second, and the memory system allowing us to access those data in such a vast amount of data. But they are still bound to the hardware aspects of things. Like I said, let's take the GPU for example. They're the cranes, right? So in a port, there is just that many amount of cranes you can put in there. You can't fit infinite amount of cranes into a limited space, and this is the exact problem computers are facing, because there is a limit to how small things can be at an atomic level, and transistors just don't get smaller anymore. But this doesn't apply for human brain. We can adapt, we can change. Our brain's always evolving through neuroplasticity, through synapses. So without a breakthrough like quantum computing, our human brain continues to be the most advanced and powerful computer existing in all time. With this, I think, to me, the future of intelligence doesn't lay in the raw computing power that computers provides. It's more about our human ability to think, to feel, to connect, and most importantly, adapt, which makes us transcend any machine. Thank you.